So we are at the very beginning of our discussion last class. How will you decide your service facility location? There are kind of few considerations, few common consideration. Again, it is not a exhaustive list where you get those 10 or 12. These are the minimum three things or four things which you have to look into. How will you decide where you will put your location, right? Whether it is basically metropolitan. Again, it depends upon how you are putting. Metropolitan are basically. Can anybody differentiate between metropolitan and Euclidean metric? What is the difference? So it is a measure of a distance. If I want to measure distance between 2 points, right, in a plane, there are two methods which we apply. One is metropolitan method, another is Euclidean metric. Metropolitan is also known as city grid method. If let's say I want to decide that, okay, I want to put a restaurant in Kid Square, right? And I'll mark, okay, which are the major population centers. If it is a, let's say, student restaurant which is designed or which is meant for students, right? Then I'll be basically looking into the major colleges or let's say major institutions, right, nearby my restaurant. There are around 17 or 18 colleges, hostels, around 20 hostels around Kit. So those are the population centers. Those are the locations from which students will come. Now, if I want to understand how far is my restaurant from each of those locations, how will I measure my distance, right? So there are two methods basically, right? How I represent my restaurant in that geography. So that is the geographical representation, whether it is metropolitan or a city grid method, or it is a Euclidean metric, right? Anyone knows what is the difference between them?
Sir, sir.
Yes.
In any company franchisee like McDonald's or Domino's, sir, they give the franchisee in the basis of Euclidean metric or what, sir? Because they consider the distance in a 500 meter or in a 1 kilometer, the next franchisee is there. That is decided by Euclidean, sir.
So that point will come into later, why franchisee or what are the rules and conditions. What I'm asking, the difference between metropolitan and Euclidean. Anybody knows or anybody is aware of that? This has been covered already in your production and operation management. Okay, so there are two ways to find distance. One is your kind of as you know, in our 7th or 8th or before that 6th class, right? If I want to measure distance between 2 points, right? So let's say this is 1 point, origin I, destination is J. So this is, let's say, hostel number 1 or hostel number K, some hostel, and this is the restaurant. What is the major distance between these 2 points? Y coordinate of this location minus Y coordinate of this location, square of that, plus X coordinate, whatever the point, right? Let's say this is the location at coordinated, how much it will be? 5 and 5, and this is at 3 and 3, or 2 or 2, right? So X coordinate 2, Y coordinate 2, and this is, let's say, X coordinate 5 and Y coordinate 5. How will I measure the distance? 5 minus 2 square of that, 5 minus 2 square of that. So it will be 9 plus 9, 18, square root of 18. So that is the distance between those 2 points, that kilometer or that meter. So that is one way to find. So Euclidean, like x square plus y square is equal to z square, right? So that is how you find the distance between 2 points. But actually in a city or a metropolitan city, right, this is not a correct way to measure the distance. Think about in this way: your home, wherever right now you are situated, and the nearby shopping mall. So if I ask you, okay, Saurabh or okay, any other student, from your home to measure the distance to the nearby shopping mall. So it is not that you are flying from that point to that other location, right? So that is what we are not looking at a 3D point, right? So you have to take certain road. You have to go, let's say, 50 meters or 100 meters to reach to the main road. On main road, you have to go left, take a left, go by, let's say, 3 kilometers or 2 kilometers, then again take a right, right? So that is how the city are designed. cities are designed, right, in a grid structure. So you'll go left, then right, north, west. So in those kind of scenarios, right? So that is where if I want to ask you from your location or your home to the nearby shopping mall or a nearby hospital, it is not that you will like take the distance y coordinate difference, x coordinate difference, right? It won't happen like that, because to move from place A to place B, how you move? You move in a city grid. You move certain distance in x coordinate, then certain distance in y coordinate, right? So think about these two locations, origin I and distance j. Let's say origin I is your home, destination j is a hospital or a restaurant or a movie theater. So if I ask you what is the distance between from your home to the movie theater, it is not that how I calculated. It is not the Euclidean measure, because in that case what you are telling, you are taking the y coordinate of this point and measuring the difference. It is not true, because you are not going in a straight line, because straight line is the shortest distance, right? Shortest distance on a plane. How actually you move? If I ask you to origin I to origin j, it might happen that you will move certain distance in x direction, then certain distance, let's say you move 100 meters or 200 meters to reach the main road, and on the main road you take 3 kilometers or 2 kilometers, right? So the distance actually you move is different from the shortest distance, right? And that is where the metropolitan or city grid distance comes into picture, to measure the actual distance a person moves from point A to point B, right? Think about in this way, like your home and your home are surrounded by your neighbors all houses, right? And behind neighbor's house is a small shop, grocery shop. So when you want to go to that grocery shop, it is not that you go by your neighbor's house, right? You do not enter neighbor's house, because that is the shortest distance, straight line connection. What you have to do, you have to come to the main road, then take a circular route and reach there, right? And that is how you measure the metropolitan distance. Why it is important, or why we are talking about these two different measures, depending upon how your service facility. Let's say if I'm talking about a cloud kitchen customers are not coming to me, so I am sending my parcels, I am sending my delivery packages, right? My place can be in a very remote location, right? But if you think about a theme based restaurant or a hospital or a movie theater, so you have to think of, because different population centers, different customers are coming to your point. It is not about the straight line distance, it is about the actual distance, how they move, what kind of road they take to reach you. Think about a fire station. Fire stations are basically when somebody in the city are designing where the fire station need to be located, they have to think into this grid distance. Fire stations should be located in such a location. Obviously, again, city gets expanded, then they get into these problems where they cannot reach on time into all the areas. So it should be far from the traffic locations. It should be in such a way that it can, like, within few seconds it can, or within few minutes it can reach into all the main road, right? So that is how the metropolitan distance is measured, right? The actual path you take, your actual path a customer takes to reach to your whichever service center you are, whichever services you are providing, right? And most of the times when you talk about in a city, in a restaurant or a hospital or a movie theater, we are looking at metropolitan distance, not on the Euclidean distance. Any doubt on this? Metropolitan or a Euclidean distance, and why they are different? Okay, so that is one criteria you have to look into, how you are measuring distance from your customer centers or the population centers to your location, right? So like I gave that example of kit location. There are many population centers. You know that there are many hostels, many colleges from where students will come. So how you are measuring distance from your, so it is not a, so if I say that, okay, measure the overall average distance customer need to travel to reach your location, so you will carry out that metropolitan distance calculation, right? Because students are not flying to your restaurant, right? Students have to take the road and come to your restaurant. So how, where your restaurant is located, how accessible your restaurant is to the main road or to the connecting road, so that will determine the distance the customer has to travel, right? And that is where the most of the places nearby the roads or the spaces where connecting roads are there are costly. So next point is, once you decide on the geographical kind of how to calculate the distance, number of facilities, right? So that is what Saurabh was asking, how you decide and why, on what basis these companies give franchisee, let's say KFC, McD, or even your these petrol pumps, right? IOCL, HPCL, BPCL, right? So for government companies, there is a restriction that okay, your petrol pumps should not be within 2 kilometers or 1.5 kilometers from the uh, competitors' petrol pump. So there are certain agreement towards it. But when you think about, let's say, Starbucks, McD, all these KFCs, right? They are competitors, and there is no common person, common entity who is holding them, right? Most of the times, again, it is decided by the location. It is decided by the number of customers, average customers it will come. Obviously, the area, right? So there is a this store Jara, I think one of the kind of biggest fashion brand, right? So they are in Mumbai port area. They have a biggest kind of one of the showroom around 50,000 square feet. So they pay around 2.5 crore rent for that place. So around 30 crore of monthly or sorry yearly rent. So again depends upon how much cost you are going to pay, because franchisee they own that place. If they own that area, that is okay. Sometimes company has to pay. Company owns those stores. In that case, company has to pay certain rents. Company has to bear certain kind of expenses of that area, right? So it is not only about the distance, it is about the location, it is about number of customers will come, it is something about the like your brand also, right? If you are a big brand like Starbucks, right, you need to be in those premium places. You need to be in Delhi's Connaught Palace or Mumbai's South Mumbai, South Delhi area. You need to show them that okay, you belong to that place. So there are a lot of decisions. It is not only about the kind of how much distance customers are coming to reach out to you, because like I said, I think in certain classes I was giving that example. When Starbucks opened in Bangalore, it was nearby the place where I was staying. So around 2.5 kilometers of line was there. People were standing. It is not that they did not have cooked. Most of them had like that kind of experience, just to because the first day of experience, people will be putting a waiting line in front of that store. So that is where your brand plays a role. Even if kind of it takes a lot of time, lot of effort to reach that store. Uh, if you are a big brand name, people will still travel. So you need not have to be concerned about the distance, or you need not have to be okay. So my place is here. People will take 1 hour or 2 hours to travel. Recently, I think this example also I kind of discussed in a class, and we had a debate on that. Right? IKEA started promoting that. So let's say the IKEA stores are basically outskirts in a like 30 kilometers or 20 kilometers outside from the city. So in one, not all the IKEA locations, I think in uh, one European country, they started promoting or they started advertising that okay, we'll give you a discount for the number of kilometers or number of miles you travel to reach our location, right? So once you start your journey, I think you have to share the location coordinates and all those things. And obviously, it is a small discount, but again, it is a marketing gimmick, right? Let's say if you travel 30 miles or 40 miles, you'll get a whatever 25 or 20 kind of dollar or 20 euros of discount, right? So rather than thinking into a discount, you think of that okay, they took the idea of how much distance or how much effort or how much time a customer is taking to reach their place, and they're acknowledging it, right? So discount is not that they're giving a big discount. Same discount they could have given that okay, we'll give 5% discount, 10% discount. But now how they're equating it? So they are now considering the distance you travel, right? So because every time somebody asks you, okay, let's go to the IKEA store, distance is always a concern because you know that you have to drive 30 miles or 20 kilometers to reach that location. But now you know that okay, as a company, they are acknowledging that okay, yes, customers do put an effort. Customers spend some time to visit our store, right? And we are considering that. Right? So that is somewhere they started some, I think this year or last year they did this kind of marketing program. So now you have to decide, once you decide that okay, how you are going to, what kind of facility you have, right? So then you decide that okay, number of facilities you'll put. To come back to what Saurabh was asking, how many franchisee in a Bhubaneswar city, say MACD. So they have to decide, okay, so in a city like Bhubaneswar, they might give 3, 5, 10 kind of franchises, right? So it should be in a such a way that people come to know about your brand. Also, such that okay, it is not a cannibalism happens, right? One store is eating out other stores revenue or profit. So this is somewhere you have to calculate the demand pattern at different sites, right? It might be a remote area because there are movie theaters and shopping malls. You know that regularly people will be traveling. Though it is located in a remote area, you know that people will be there. It might be a crowded area, but people might not look into because there is no parking space available there, or the like area is in a such a location that people will not spend that much amount of money in fast food and all those things, right? So that is where you have to do a customer segmentation. You have to go to the field, you have to look into what is the demand pattern in those areas. Capacity may be different at different sites. Capacity again is defined by most of the times with the area or the space you have, right? If you do not, let's say, yes, I want to have a restaurant or a McD or a KFC near Kit or near, let's say, this all the IT companies, the SEZ is there. There might be a constraint on space. Already existing restaurants have taken all the spaces. I might not have required space, right? And that will define my capacity. Then there are certain services which are interdependent on each other, right? So let's say certain like hospitals or emergency hospitals, right, dependent on the testing facilities available, right? Your testing facility, big hospital, yes, testing facilities will be inside. Smaller hospitals, so they'll ask, or clinics will ask, okay, go and do the test and come back, right? If you look into those smaller clinics across Bhubaneswar or whichever city you are in, right? So they do not have kind of big let's say CT scan, ultrasound, you cannot do it there. Obviously in big hospitals those facilities are there, so they have to be complementary services available nearby, right? If there are this kind of uh, this diagnostic services, blood test, or let's say CT scan, ultrasound, this kind of services are available, both of them complement each other. Clinics send patients, and obviously patients do those tests and go back to those clinics, right? So those kind of interdependency you have to look into, right? So like I said, if you are looking up a restaurant and you know that okay, lot of these premium places where major student like or student hubs or the let's say IT hubs are there, you know that you will not get a, it is very costly to put a restaurant there, right? So now you will think of okay, where can I put my restaurant? Then you look into okay, it might be a remote place, but there is a mall there, there are movie halls, every day around 300 400 people anyway minimum they will be there, so I can put my restaurant there, right? So because there is a interdependency between malls, movie theaters, and the food or like kind of food joints, right? Even though like big auditoriums. So sometimes, so if you see, look into hospital kind of hotels, restaurants will be nearer to your railway stations or kind of big auditoriums. You know that people, convention centers, marriage halls. You know that people will be there, so there will be continuous demand for your food services or any kind of services there, right? So that is something which will decide how many facilities you have to put. The first point is demand center, where you have to do a customer segmentation. You have to carry out certain clustering to understand which are the major demand centers. Then how much location, how much space you have available, right? Whether you can meet the demand. If I put a restaurant, can I serve 50 customers at a time, or only I have space to serve only 20 customers? Then third thing is that whether there is any complementary services, where if it is a restaurant, whether there are movie theaters, shopping malls nearby. If it is a small hospitals, whether there are diagnostic centers nearby. Vice versa, again, if you are thinking of a diagnostic centers, you have to look into whether there are clinics nearby, right? So that is something which will decide your number of facilities you are putting on that kind of service. Any questions on this?
Sir, sometime in a small town also, sir, some company gives their, suppose not in a talking in the sense of a Domino's and MACD, sir, suppose some company like MDH or Catch, or DS Group, Catch Masala, they also gives their distributor or agency partner to the limited location, sir. Why that? Because in that small city also, I noticed that, sir, some people in around 500 meter only, they give the other franchisee or other distributor.
Is it a service or you are talking about product?
Product, sir.
So that decision will be completely different, right? You want to, so you need not. So do you think that distributor will have a front office where they'll treat and greet customers? So they don't worry about how many customers are coming to them. Customers do not come to them. So they have a space requirement where they can store their products. Their requirement will be completely different. How to inventory product, how to store the products without much cost. So they are not going to store in the city, right, warehouse, right, where the rental space is per month 25,000 or 30,000. So they will look into spaces where they will be paying 2,000 or 3,000 per month. So that consideration is completely different. So now the point is, how will I optimize, right? So there are many things to optimize. I have to optimize my cost, right? I have to optimize that, okay, my revenue or profit I'm getting more, right? So that is where the criteria will be different for your objective or your vision. Why we are talking about this? Because see, think about all the services. Services can be from companies which are profit oriented, or can be from the governments also, right? Think about government hospitals, government bus shelters, or the transportation system, right? Whichever from the government side or the public sector company side, right? Obviously, if they make profit, it is good. So it is not that they want to make loss, but the major orientation or objective will be to maximize the utility. What do you mean by maximize the utilities? So whatever their services provided, right? Maximum number of people are able to get that services. So as a government, like, or a state government or a central government, if I want to put a hospital or a primary healthcare center or a school or a transportation, this bus transportation system, right? Citywide bus transportation system. So my major criteria, obviously, I like, if it is a transportation system, I want to make money. Government schools also, some minimal fee I will be taking. But the point is not the making a profit, right? My objective is not to make the profit. My objective is that my service center or my whatever services I'm providing can be or should be utilized by the maximum number of people whom I intend to serve, right? So as a public sector criteria will be different. So when I talk about public sector, it is basically government. Think about government hospitals, schools, primary healthcare centers, right? Same thing when I talk about the private hospitals, private schools, private transportation, right? My two optimization criteria will be minimization of cost, maximization of revenue, right? So I should get maximum number of people, maximum number of customers while minimizing my cost. So cost will come from services, maybe the employee cost, maybe the rental cost, maybe the electricity cost, right? And that is something which we discussed in one of the competitive clustering case, right? Where competitors come together and share those infrastructure burden, right? Minimizing the cost. They know that that will impact in certain way to the customer, number of customers who come to the restaurant, but it significantly reduces the infrastructure cost. So typical problem will be basically trade-off between cost of building and operating facilities versus cost of transportation, right? And that is somewhere you have to think of what kind of services. If it is a cloud kitchen, right, you can have that cloud kitchen in a remote place. But if it is a restaurant where customers are coming to you, it has to be in a nearby location, right? So that is where you have to decide what kind of facility you are going to build. Then again, the other things, parking facilities, government regulations, there will be certain restrictions of putting, let's say, petrol pump in certain major population areas. Then kind of if you think of some services where you are traveling to the customer, think about consulting, auditing, loan care services, right? So where customers are not coming to you, you have a office, let's say chartered accountant office, or a uh, some like kind of services, like let's say think about urban club, whichever services they are providing, right? So they need not have to be location. They might market their products through website and all those things. They might not have to be in the center locations where they'll keep their resources. They can put their resources in all the remote centers. Wherever the requirement comes, those people can go and serve those customers, right? Then when customers travel to, no direct cost is incurred by the provider. So that is something again you have to think of, because whenever customer is coming to your location, right? So it is about the whether customer will travel to you. Think about the IKEA business model, Decathlon. So Decathlon will be always outside, not in the city, because the space they require to store different kind of products will be always outside the city. They require a big space, and that's why it will be always outside the city. So you have to consider how much effort. Why a customer will be willing to travel that much distance? Obviously, your services should be that will be something very differentiable, something better than your competitors. But when you talk about public sector, so if I summarize this slide, private sector, profit maximization, revenue maximization, cost minimization, right? So that will be two criteria which will be taken by private sector, right? Public sector, it will be utility maximization. What do you mean by utility maximization? Whatever service they are providing, whether maximum number of people are able to get that kind of services, right? Utility will be maximized if people have to travel less to reach public facilities, or more people can travel to public facility, right? So there are two ways to it. Either total utility is number of people and the time or effort they spend to reach that facility, right? So we'll take an example and try to understand it. Let's say I have three cities. City A, which is a very big city. City which is B, which is a city B, and city C are of equal kind of sizes. Now the point is, I can have only one uh, hospital. Let's say this is a primary health center, small hospital. Think of it as a small hospital, right? So now the decision the government has to take. Think about these are the city or the villages, right? I have this village A, city B, city C. City is city A or the village A is where my most of the population. So I have done a census. I know that most of the kind of elderly people, average age is around 50 or 45, right? So most of the elderly people stay in that village or city, right? City C is close to kind of not sorry. City C is the location where the majority of elderly people stay. City A is the one of the big cities, so you have many kind of children, elderly people. So right mix of people, you know that many patients or many utilization will happen. Then city B is centrally located, right? So now what you have to decide, where I should put as a government, where I should put my this primary healthcare center, whether it should be placed in city A or city B or city C, right? So now how will you decide? Any idea? So just again repeating, city B is a center location. If I look into the cities, city B is in between city A and city C. City C is a city where the average uh, age of population is greater than 50, right? Most of the elderly people stay there. City A is a big city in comparison to it is almost double of city B and city C, right? So these are the criteria, or these are the conditions of these three cities. City C mostly elderly people. City B is situated between city A and C. City A is a big, very big city, almost twice the size of city B and C, right? Now, as a government or a state government or a municipality, I have only amount of money to put only one center, primary healthcare center. Where should I put my primary healthcare center? Right? How will you decide on this? Remember, what is if it is a government decision, it has to be done by the utilization, maximum utilization, right? You have to maximize the utility. How will you do that? What are the factors we'll consider? So if there are three cities and you have money, you have the fund to put only one primary healthcare center or a small hospitals, right? Where you should put. Obviously, there are other considerations. There are a lot of political things goes on. Lot of pull and push comes from different sectors. So that is something which you have not considered, which again is a big factor. But let's say it is ideal situation. It is only based on mathematics. If you're able to calculate, you'll be able to whatever you as a consultant you agree or what you suggest, you'll be able to put.
Sir, I would like to put it in city A because there will be frequent users and I will have a steady income over there as well.
Okay. Any other answer? Okay. So see, already answer is given in this screen. So these are the three things you have to look into. Utilization, right? So like I said, city A is a big city, right? How many people? So because percentage is not given, right? So that first you have to collect data, right? On an average, what is the utilization number of people? Let's say children, mothers, elderly people. Again, you can do different segmentation for different group of people. Children, one group, mothers, then elderly people, or let's say some critically ill persons, or some like kind of normal cold and flu, right? So that kind of segmentation also can be done. So first thing is about the utilized segmentation based on the utility for all the three cities, right? What is the utilization on an average, right? So let's say this is a 1 lakh population and the city B and city C is 50,000, right? Out of this 1 lakh population, let's say monthly 40% or 30% utilization. That means around 30,000 people, or let's say 10% utilization. 10,000 people might visit. Here it might be 5% or here might be 8%, right? So that is the data you have to collect. So that is the first part, utilization. What is the utilization rate? How many people are going to use here? Obviously, city A is the biggest city it is given, but what is the utilization rate? Then accordingly multiply by population, and that will give you the average utilization for that city. Once you get that, distance per capita, right? And that is somewhere, remember what we discussed, Euclidean distance or Manhattan distance or city grid distance you have to calculate, or metropolitan distance. How much on an average, if I put, let's say, then you have to take three use cases. If I put in city A, so I have here 1 lakh population, here 50,000, 50,000. Again, I'm just giving you an example of 1 lakh 50, 50 population data you have to get. What is the average distance? So for this 1 lakh population, distance will be less, right? For this 50,000, what is the distance to travel to if I put a city like location here? If I put a primary healthcare center here, what is the distance, average distance from city C? So I have to calculate that distance. Same thing here. If I put in city B, if I put in city C, right? Depending upon the utilization rate, what will the average distance people will travel? If I put a primary healthcare center in city C, right? How much distance they will travel? Then distance per visit, right? So one thing is distance per capita rate per person, then how many times they are visiting. So if I want to calculate in a year or in a month, think about, and that will depend upon your customer segmentation. If it is the CTA is mostly young people, right? After one, out of 1 lakh, only 10,000 children, 10,000 elderly people, around 70 to 80,000 on middle age group, right? So yes, they might travel to this primary healthcare center, but number of times they are traveling to primary healthcare center will be less. But if a city is mostly elderly people or children are more, right? There might be a situation where they will be traveling monthly 3 or 4 times, right? So that is something again you have to calculate, or again you have to find out by survey or doing certain kind of research work. Once you find out that, so basically 3 data point, minimum 3 data point: number of people, utilization, then how much distance they travel per kind of travel, like per one once they go, and number of times, frequency of travel, right? Number of, so number of people who will travel or utilize your services, distance they are traveling, number of times they are traveling, right? Once you multiply that, you'll come to know that what is the effort they are putting, right? What is the effort? So that is something you have to reduce. Number for the total number of people. So when I talk about utility maximization, if you look into this last point, utility will be maximized if people have to travel less to reach a public facilities, or more people can travel to the public facilities. So here I'm taking those three factors: utilization, number of people who are using my services; distance per capita, how much distance they are traveling; then also I'm considering number of times they are traveling, because for each segment of people, number of times they're traveling will be different. For elderly and for children, number of times or number of times they're utilizing my primary healthcare center will be much more than the middle age or younger people, right? Considering those numbers, right, whichever is basically so if I multiply that, what is that? Distance multiplied by number of times they're traveling into number of people, right? So that is something which is like kind of a effort they're putting, right? I have to minimize that total. If I'm able to minimize that effort, right, then I should put my service center or the primary healthcare center at that point, right? Then obviously other factors will be there which we are not discussing, whoever gets the most vote and all those things, which is not in our control. But at least if I go by theoretically or logically or mathematically, right? So at least these are the few things I have to look into, right? So here I'm not looking into making money, so that will be my secondary factor here, because it is a primary healthcare center which is from the government side. My point will be utility maximization or effort reduction. Maximum number of people should be able to visit my primary healthcare center with less effort, right? So that is something from a government side. If I'm putting a healthcare center, think about a private ATM, this SBI, ICICI, or whichever bank, right? So they have to put a ATM or a small kind of same thing can be applied for a small bank also, right? So now how will you go about it, right? So remember what we discussed on private, if it is a private organization, right? So their criteria is revenue or profit maximization, right? So that is first thing you have to find out, or so this is from the ethical analysis. Define and weigh ATM objectives, right? So what are the objectives putting that ATM, right? So again, it differentiates. If it is a SBI or a public sector bank, they might look into how many people, let's say if it is a rural village also, they have to put the ATM there. But think about Citibank, say think about the HDFC bank, HSBC bank, purely private, when they look into the profit maximization. So weightage given to the profit will be maximum. Win market share. So that might be one objective, because if people do not see your ATM, one of the criteria why SBI and ICICI were successful was that, so they are able to capture all the premium locations to put ATM, right? And back up our mind before this Google Pay, Paytm, or PhonePe came, where everything transaction was cash based. If you see ATM, we know that this bank has highest number of ATMs, so I can easily access. Then later on, obviously things change, and you can withdraw your money from any of the ATMs. Right? Improve services, right? So again, it is a typical example, not necessarily that profit maximization will be always it, right? So let's say for the particular bank where this consulting company has done that survey, right? Generate profit came as the, so this, how will you do it? This is your internal survey where your higher management will sit together and say that, okay, this is our objective for putting a ATM or a small facility. Our major objective is generate profit or generate fees for profit. Then win market share. Win market share will come from the positioning part, where I'll be putting my ATM or small facilities so that many people will be aware of my brand, aware of my bank. Then improve service, right? In the back end also, I know that many customers are complaining that there is no ATM where I can withdraw money. I have to go to the other ATM to withdraw money, and most of the time they are not working. So why don't you? So I have got a lot of customer complaints over the years that I have very less ATM facilities across this area, right? So that is also one objective. Then this is the again a market research, marketing research you have to do. You have to find out population of those locations where you need to put your ATM, demographic spread. So that is somewhere the age, your income, all those information you have to get, right? How many of your customers, how many of them are non-customers, commercial and retail density, right? So think about how many shops are there. So this is something again you have to do to the go to the field and do that kind of research to find out that how many shopping malls, how many food joints, how many like normal shops are available, because shops are there means people will need cash. So this again we are looking back 5 years back when we did not have this kind of uh, options available of online payment or phone pay, Google Pay, all those options are available. Routes to work, right? So most of the times people withdraw money or while coming back from the office, they withdraw money, right? Whether I can put nearby offices, nearby schools, nearby universities. Then existing ATMs from my end, so from the bank which for which the survey is being conducted, and also for the competitors. So these are the information you will collect. Then generate shortlist using empirical data based upon these locations, taking into those consideration distance measure, right? Whether competitors are there or not. Identify few suitable locations, right? Then generate shortlist out of those, let's say 50, 30 or 100 locations. Carry out a actual focus group discussion with branch managers of those locations where you have your banks, with customers, right? Go to like and that is where your marketing research comes into place, where you go to the customers and ask that. So right now if you go and ask that how many times you withdraw money from the ATM, many of us will say that I have not withdrawn money for last 5 months or 6 months, right? And but that was not the situation 3 years back or 5 years back, where people used to at least monthly once or twice people used to withdraw money, right? And that is the data you will get into. If let's say you do not find cash, what you do? What are the other thing you do? Whether you go to the next ATM or whether you go to my bank to withdraw money, right? So those are the key information we will get from those customer surveys. Count footfalls and eyeballs, right? And this is a standard marketing research method where again either you'll go to different ATMs and day by day, each day, weekend, how many people generally come, right? Obviously you will not know that how much money they are withdrawing, that is illegal, but at least standing outside, right, you'll get a third view, right, that okay, how many people are visiting those ATMs, right? And that is also many kind of marketing research agencies do for these kind of retail outlets, Reliance Retail, and some of you, if you have done those kind of internships, right? One of the key research projects during internship will be to go to the competitor, look into how many customers are visiting each day, weekend, uh, particular holidays, how many people are visiting, what are the items are being sold. Obviously, you cannot go and ask them, right? Nobody in the their kind of store is going to give you that details, only through observations, right? Record site characteristics, again look into, right, again security, how safe that location is, that electricity is available or not. So those are the characteristics. Then out of those 50 sites which you are pinpointed, once you get those details, right, then optimize it, right? You'll put into those integer optimization model, which are the 10 locations or 5 locations I have to select, and these are the criteria, right? And optimize the location, right? So what you are going to optimize, either I'll minimize my cost of operating those ATMs, right? So that can be one consideration. Or if like through ATM I want to generate fees, number of people, many people use more than 5 times or 3 times in a month, and so that I'll generate some ATM fees, right? Or if I put my ATMs annually, I charge 300 rupees or 500 rupees for ATM usage. So that is something I want to maximize, right? So either way, I have to, if it is let's say SBI or some public sector banks. So they might be looking into minimization of cost because they know that they have to put the ATMs in all the rural areas also, but they'll be looking into where if I put, my cost will be minimized. Think about HSBC, City, all those private banks. So they'll be looking into where should I put my ATM. Overall, my profit will be maximized. Right? Again, the same criteria or same the process can be applied for any kind of private sector. It can be for a restaurant. It can be for a with obviously slight changes. Hospitals, right? Some if it is a hospitals, you have to look into some additional consideration, right? How easily accessible through road, right? Whether it is a where you can put that okay, fire exit can be ample space for fire exit, right? Because there are certain regulations you have to abide by, right? But overall optimization criteria will remain same. If it is a private hospital, they'll be always looking into maximization of profit, maximization of revenue, right? Any questions on this? So these are the few things which we discussed in previous slide. Nature and objective of service organization. So fire station need to be kind of located where you have a large space to put all the vehicles. It should be nearby the road, right? Bank, if you are putting a bank, even if it is small bank, ideally you should have some space, small area where vault can be placed. Physician's office need to be some like space allocated for some privacy, right? Land availability and space requirement depending upon what kind of services you are providing, right? If it is let's say MACD or a KFC, right? You might not need a lot of space to where people can take out orders, right? You can just say that okay, this is a takeout location, right? People will come and but only take order and take out food. There is no sitting arrangement. But if it is a premium place, right? You want to showcase your brand, right? Like Starbucks too. They'll put a lot of money on rent, but they take a larger area where can people enjoy the ambience. Flexibility is something like designing for future. This point we have already discussed earlier, and that is sometimes people do miss whenever somebody is putting a service, whether it is a hospital, school, any kind of service, right? You have to design it for the next 5 years or 10 years. You might need to have room for the expansion. You just cannot say that okay, I'll have a hospital for 100 bed or 50 bed. In future it might need a space to have a 200 bed or 500 bed. So that is something designing for future. You have to have that flexibility in space. Security, in some cases, obviously how secure your location is, right? ATM locations or your like kind of restaurants, all those places where customers are coming to you, right? Need to be in a secure location. Then aesthetic factors leads to service with a smile. So that is again a like kind of how will ambience you look inside your hospital or need. So that is something Western hospitals kind of put a lot of effort in. If you go to a children hospital in US or Europe, right? So it will be designed in a such way that there will be playrooms, there will be toys nearby, which is unless it is a very premium hospital or a premium location in India, I don't think they will have those facilities for children, right? You go to a USA, so then there was a case study, right? So whenever these children have this kind of CT scan or kind of this kind of machines are there, right? Big machines, and once you get inside, it makes a lot of noise. Some of you, in case, have gone through those CT scans. So once you go, those states are going on, it is a lot of noise, right? So children get scared, right? Because it is they have to be alone in that room, and so how to like, and so they did a survey. So they started to like kind of find out how, and we'll discuss today that Servicescape, how you design a hospital or how you design a testing center, right? This kind of CT scan machines, so that children are not scared. Otherwise, what will happen every time is children goes, they used to strap them, right? They used to bind them, right? Again, they will cry, but That was the normal process. So this Philips and GE, who are the major kind of healthcare in this healthcare market, so they did this kind of survey. So now what they told, they designed those machines. So machines remain same, but inside of that machines, they started putting all those figures, cartoon figures, or the, let's say this is Aladdin and those cartoon stories, right? So the like images and all those things were in such a way that, and before they enter, before the children enter, so they'll not say that you are going to do it, we are going to do a test. So you are going to play a game. So now you stay still and look into that. Okay, this is you are the role of Aladdin, and this is the event going on, right? So now what happens? Children gets immersed in that service. Now no longer even the sound comes, right? So he or she has been told that okay, villains and all those things will start making noises, but you have to stay still, you, because you are the hero, right? And that is how the like ambience, everything is maintained in such a way that now children are excited to be in that, rather than earlier that fear factor was there. So that is something, again, you have to like ambience or aesthetic factors comes into place. Then community and environment. So again, like in today's world, lot of kind of discussion is happening on the how like you are maintaining the environment nearby, right? A lot of areas, lot of big this branded kind of restaurants stopped using plastic to showcase that, started showing how much food wastage is happening, right? So that like people are aware of that. Okay, how much every time you go out and eat in those kind of branded restaurant and you throw out whatever left out food is there, they'll started showing that okay, per day this much kg of food waste happened, right? And that gives you a, like at least customers or people like us, whenever we go to that restaurant, will be little bit of conscious to waste food, right? So will not do those kind of mistakes, right? So that is somewhere the environmental factor, or how much conscious about you are as a restaurant or as a brand to the environment comes into picture, right? So these are something, because in today's world that is something which people actually look into, right? As a company or as an organization, are you taking care of the environment? Whether you have started reducing the plastic usage, or measuring how much carbon footprint you are putting onto environment, right? So that is something which will be in today's world, which will be very essential. And any questions on this? Then once I decided, so look into this way, I decided on the number of locations I'll put my whatever service centers, restaurant, hospital, schools, right? Then what I have to do now, I am designing inside the restaurant, right? And that is the concept of environment inside that service space, right? So that is known as Servicescape, which we'll discuss in the next slide. So once I started designing, think it as the interior designing of your services, the physical layout. Spatial cues are needed to orient visitors, right? Uh, think about any kind of movie theaters, shopping malls, your museums, right? You need to have cues, right? Okay, you have to go there, or sometimes they put a map, right? And that is sometimes mandatory also, not sometimes always. You have to, every floor you have to have a map, you have to have a map of the building showing the fire exit, right? So those are, sometimes it is regulated in terms of fire exit, sometimes it is necessary also. If it is a big museum and you have to show that okay, you have to go to, if you want to go to this section, you have to take this path. Facilities draw on previous experiences. So this is somewhere, if you are a big brand, you know that what are the mistakes or what are the good things you did on previous facilities, right? You take the help from your previous learning opportunities, right? So somewhere, let's say if it is nearby the sea or nearby the river, you know those, in sometimes rainy seasons flood water may come in, and most of the Japanese restaurants are designed in such a way, because they are earthquake prone, they are know that every time earthquake comes, river water will be coming inside, right? So they started designing their restaurant in such a way that, so once kind of this kind of situation arrive, it they can store the like whatever food or items or whatever inside the restaurant, the larger like top area, right? So they have spaces designed specifically for that, right? And that is the like previous learning, right? So first time when they would have created Those would have spoiled, food would have spoiled, and all those things would have happened. But later on, they learn from that mistake or learn from that experience. Entrance atrium allows visitors to gain a quick orientation, observe others for behavioral cues. Think about anytime you have gone in an international flight, or even the first time you went on flight or a train or anywhere, which happened first time, right? So how you do it? You started observing people, right? Uh, what is that customer in front of you are doing, right? And that is where the waiting line management happens, right? So it is not that somebody is going to stand there and give you instruction, right? Sometimes when it is crowded, people are there and started giving instructions. Otherwise, what happens? We are like whatever our front customer is doing, where they are keeping their luggage, where they're removing their shoes, belts, phones, and keeping there, right? We start to observe and we start to do that, do the same thing, right? Orientation aids and signages, just as you are here, maps reduce anxiety, right? So this is what I was talking about, the like let's say big shopping malls, big museums, right? So every now and then they will have map and they'll be showing that okay, you are in this position. If you want to go to nearest restroom or nearest exit, right, you have to take this path, right? So that removes certain kind of anxiety, right? Hospitals also, big hospitals, they are again mandated to put those kind of signages. So this brings to the point of Servicescapes, right? Servicescapes is Vittal.
So in the last slide, I couldn't relate the picture in the slide, like how it is related to the concept.
No, so this is about the signages, right? So think about in case of emergency. So again, this is not a something. So this is just a cartoon. So let's say in case of emergency, this is a nuclear plant, right? So two shoes are there, right? So if you see what is it written, running shoes, because it's not written for what? In case of emergency, for what? So you have to mention that okay, this is for because whenever nuclear wastages or in case of nuclear leakage is there, right? You need different shoes for that, right? So that is something need to be mentioned. Use these shoes to move from point A to point B, because in case of spillage or in case of this kind of liquid or chemical is flowing, right? Whatever shoe you are wearing, you have to remove that and put this type of shoes, right? Without that kind of signages, without that kind of instructions, a person will not know. A new person or even the like those who are working there, right? These kind of emergency situations, you have to put your signages and instructions very clearly. I remember going to a hospital, so they have written their fire exit, right? So actually, the fire exit has been removed. The staircases have been in the other direction, but they have not removed the signage. Just think about in an emergency situation. So ideally, the signages direction should have been oriented in a proper way. So what has happened? The new building construction has happened. The previous staircases which used to be there, that has been closed, and new staircases, the steel staircases, has like kind of has been integrated into the building. So that they have done properly. Staircases are fine and all those things are fine, but the signage has not changed. Signage is still showing to the old staircase which has been closed. Think about that patient in case unfortunately some fire problem happens and that signages doesn't show the proper orientation. So here it was just a kind of a cartoon example for that. Whenever you are putting a signages, instructions should be there, right? So any kind of usage. So let's say there is a fire and you have put those fire extinguisher without any instructions how to use that. Most of us do not know that. Some of us who might have gone through those training do know how to use that. So if you have just put a fire extinguisher without instruction how to operate that, same situation here. So what is that shoe for? You have to mention that, right? So you just have written in case of emergency, but why my whatever shoe I am wearing will not be useful in case of emergency? Why is that? Right? So those instruction has to be happen there. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So now coming back to Servicescape. Servicescape is the interior. Think about any restaurant, any hospital, how you design the interior part of it, right? So when I talk about ambience, right, I think of that Servicescape. So what are the physical kind of And it is not only about the customers, right? And that is one important thing. It is also about the employee. Because think about this way: hospital, even restaurant, even museums, your movie theaters, customers will be there for 3 hours, 4 hours maximum, right? Unless it is a hospital where a patient gets admitted, they have to be there for few days. But your employee is staying day in and day out. Think about a nurse, think about a doctor. Every day 8 to 12 hours, then they're staying there. Your movie theater, those employees in shifts, they will be working for 8 to 12 hours. Any school, any kind of museum, customer is, yes, obviously we are designing that ambience, that kind of physical facilities, obviously for customers, because that is where you make the money. But also you have to consider the employee, because they are the ones who are continuing to stay there, live there. One third or half of their life will be spent there. And that is where, if you see, like a lot of big companies, right, it is not related to this discussion, but this is what I think, if some of you are in HR, one of the key consideration in today's human resources is how you design offices for future. And the COVID has impacted a lot. A lot of big companies have this kind of great facility where you can, mothers can leave their children. They are, so basically they are mixing. Before this COVID came, now COVID has happened, all the companies will try to do that. But before COVID happened, most of the companies who cared for employees, right, started mixing, like started at least bringing that home environment to office, right? Earlier offices used to be very traditional, like kind of, and that is something interesting which happened to me, right? Back out of college, back in 2006 when I graduated, there was a company named Satyam. uh, I think some of you might know that, one of the, that used to be one of the biggest IT company, and later on Tech Mahindra acquired it. There was a big scam 2 to 3 years down the line. So I was selected in that, and I was actually, here I was supposed to be in Bhubaneswar only, Bhubaneswar office. That was the first time they opened their offices there. So the first day of orientation, it happened on Monday. One Monday, I forgot the date. So the HR took us through a tour, because that was the first office they had in Bhubaneswar. They had taken a, like, only one floor was kind of operating, and I think till now also most of the software companies are kind of designed in such a way. So these are like kind of like cubicles where you will enter, and lot of like, one cubicle or one area where 4 or 3 software engineers will be working, and there is access cards which you have to go in. Like if you want to enter or go out, you'll have that, not for the floor, also for those rooms also, right? So that looks like a, and now look into those, if I compare that into a Google office or a Facebook office, so it will look like a prison and open space. Because there, if you go, okay, once you enter that room, you feel like, again, I do not have anything with IT offices or those kind of offices, people do work there, so it is their livelihood. But sometimes it feels like that, okay, once you enter those offices, it is like a prison. You are there for 8 hours or 10 hours and you have to be there. But look into those modern offices. You go to the Netflix, Amazon, Facebook, Google, even smaller, some of the banks also, right? So they have removed that criteria. Okay, you have a certain workspace, because otherwise, what happens? Okay, I have this room or I have this workspace. I'm confined to that room. So this is a prison which I'm willingly getting into, right? So that working space concept, working room concept has gone away. You are free to move around, work anywhere, as long as work is done, and there is no fixed limit. Okay, you have to come to office at 8, you move, go out at 1 hour lunch, half hour lunch. So those concepts are gradually, obviously there are a few companies still do that, but gradually they're removing those concepts. Because see, as an employee, anyone working in a company, right, significant amount of their time, when they spend 8 to 10 hours of their waking life, because otherwise what happens, they go to their houses, rooms, and sleep for 8 to 9 hours, right? Only 3 or 4 hours is left in a day which they are awake and outside office. Otherwise, most of their waking life they're spending in the office. And if that is not pleasant, they will not be obviously productive in a long run, right? In a short run, you can like kind of force them to work, but in a long run, they will not be productive. So that is something again in a apply in any kind of service sector. You have to make sure that the ambience is equally pleasant, equally helpful for your employees also, right? So whenever you are designing a service scape, it is not only for the customer oriented, it has to be employee oriented also. Ambient conditions, noise level, music, lighting, temperature, scent. And this is, believe me, once you join an office, this will be the very interesting thing. No office in this world has able to solve, even though I don't think in Google and all this. So temperature part. And I'll give it this in writing. If you are in a sales job, it is different. If you are a desk job, you are in office for 8 to 10 hours. Temperature will be a headache for you because there will be colleagues nearby sitting you who will have require like little higher temperature. There will be colleagues who will require less temperature. You might be either way, right? And there will be a lot of these kind of fights, small fights, not physical fights obviously, but these kind of. So somebody will go and increase temperature in thermostat, somebody will come and decrease temperature in thermostat. Because that is something everybody, it is not our own house, right? Somebody has their own orientation towards what is the temperature, right? They require spatial layout and functionality, right? Reception area, circular paths for employees and customers, and focal point. So this is something how you even the if some of you have taken retail management, right? One of the key chapter or key um, area of retail management is how you design those retail spaces, right? How you design a Reliance retail or a More or a, let's say, IKEA or a Walmart, right? How those places, how those locations will be oriented, right? IKEA is famous for their labyrinth. That means once you enter IKEA, you are lost, pleasantly lost in there, because they want you to be there for long hours, and the longer you stay, the more you buy, because obviously the products are great. So they want you to be lost in that space. Signs and symbols, artifacts, right? Again, there are certain regulations towards it. Some signages has to be there. Others are basically how good, how well you understand customer mentality, right? And accordingly, you have to put those signages like that example we are discussing about, right? So, what are the few points under that? Ambient conditions, temperatures, air quality, noise, music, odor, right? Hospitals, some hotels, and there is a, I think, Oberoi Hotel. So in Mumbai, the biggest Oberoi Hotel, so they put one jasmine kind of scent. So that is cost around 75,000 per liter. But why they put it? The background is that every time a customer visit, right? So that scent will be there in their back of mind. Every time they visit any kind of Oberoi Hotel, so that will be back up, because as human beings, we are able to recall around 65 to 70% of the scent. We're not able to recall the color, we're not able to recall the wordings, but we are very kind of able to, like, our olfactory senses will be able to recall those scents properly. Around, obviously, other mammals are better than us, but as humans, we are able to recall around 65 to 70%. Space, function, layout, equipment, furnishings, right? Again, for different uh, kind of so if it is a just a delivery layout, right? People will come and take out their order. You need not have to have a front office, you need not have to have a sitting arrangement. But if it is a restaurant where people will be there to eat food, like have a great time, right? So that sitting arrangement has to be properly designed. Hospitals, where emergency patients will come, emergency patient has to come from a different site, right? Because they need not have to go through the normal process. Then where the testing facilities need to be located, where the pharmacy will be located. That generally, if you think pharmacy is the ground floor, most of the hospitals, because you know that some patient will just consult doctors and go by. They need not be coming for testing facilities. So pharmacy should be in a location where it is both like kind of attending to in-house patient and OPD patients, right? Signages, symbols, artifacts we have discussed. Style, decor, and all those things has to be taken care. So this is the actual what you have designed, right? So this is the perceived servicescape, right? Always remember what actual happens, reality, and how we perceive reality, how a customer or your employees are perceiving that reality will be impacted by many factors, right? Their cognitive, their beliefs, categorization, and symbolic meaning, right? Different people, right, will have different belief systems, right? If my belief system is that okay, we should save money, we should not kind of waste money in unnecessary things. Let's say that is my belief system. If I go to a restaurant and if I go to a museum or if I go to a hospital and look into that, okay, water is running, a lot of lighting is there which is not required. Daylight it is already, if they open the shades, daylight can come in, but they have closed the shades and they have designed windows in such a way that sunlight cannot come in. And that is one factor most of the interior designers look into nowadays. Whenever they're designing, without much consumption of electricity, can you design that natural sunlight can come in? And because customers are looking into that, why in a daytime you'll spend that much on natural light when you can open those areas and natural light can come in? Why you are putting that much on electricity? Because that is my perception, that is my belief system, right? You might, as a organization, you want to showcase that how premium your restaurant is, or how like kind of premium your hospital is. But as a patient or as a customer, if my belief system is that unnecessary wastage should not happen, right? So that will be negatively impacting that, right? Obviously, emotional, mood, and attitude, and that lot affects on hospital scenario, right? Because see, anytime we visit hospitals, it is a scary situations for most of us, right? Will be in a panic mode, right? And how that atmosphere is, if lot of noises are surrounding, emergency passageways in between the normal kind of patients, accident patients like going through the same lift or the same staircases, right? So that will increase the panicness in normal like regular patients, right? So that is something again you have to look into, right? Hospitals, that's why there is significant thought process goes on which area or which how to design those hospitals, right? Because you have a mix of different kind of patients, right? And obviously due to COVID, additional safety parameters, additional things need to be taken care of. Physiological pain, comfort, movement, physical fit, again, right? One of the big challenge, if you see into look into Indian restaurants or hospitals, people who are not kind of physically disabled or not kind of have issues with physical movement, look into any restaurant, even the big brand names, right, or hotels, right? Most of the times these staircases are not designed for them. Even our schools or colleges, universities, right? And that is a very unfortunate situation. Around 10 to 20 percentage of our like kind of population are kind of negatively impacted by the designs, because we do not consider, while designing, interior decorators or the service designers do not consider that. And that is something which we'll discuss in the next class when you talk about design thinking. And that is how the design thinking has come into the service design process. Because service design always used to think about that quick, how to attract customers, right? So that was the main goal. In design thinking, how a customer will feel coming to your restaurant or your hospital, right? Rather than my focus being on attracting customer. Now there is that whenever a customer walks into any kind of service situation, how that customer feels, right? And again, like I said, it is not only for customer. Think about an employee who is physically challenged, right? And you do not have a parking space, you do not have a kind of a this properly designed staircase, right? So basically you have not thought about that, right? As a designer, service designer, you have not thought about that. And that is a very big thing in country like India. You go to any restaurant, any hospital, right? Very rarely you will find those kind of because as we generally do not look into that. But if you consciously look into that, think about that, if a blind person is going or a physically disabled person on a wheelchair is going to a classroom or going to a hospital, how that person will move on these staircases, which is physically designed in such a way that. So this basically one thing, how you design your facility, how you perceive that facilities, your employees and customer. Then obviously based upon how they perceive, right? Their behavior will be impacted, right? So their behavior, what we expect from customer, right? So they are attracted to that facility, they'll stay and explore, right? More time they stay and explore. Obviously, again, depending upon the facility, if it is a hospital, it is not that we want our patient to stay there or explore. But obviously, if it is a restaurant or a museum or a theme park, right? Spend money, whether it is a hospital, if it is a private hospital, they also want you to spend money. They want you to do, whether it is required or not, do all those testings. Then return, right? So basically, somebody comes to your service space, service care, then they explore, then they spend money, then they go back, right? So that is the four things they do, right? Based upon how well they perceive your space. Then what about employee affiliation? That means how they are associated with you, whether it is a permanent labor or a contractual labor for 1 month or 1 day or 1 week. Exploration. So they might be in different offices. They how they look into your office, right? So they might have previous experiences. Stay longer. Obviously, as a company, I want my employees to stay longer there. So here both are different, right? When I want my employee, it is per day basis I'm looking into customer. But when I'm looking into employee, I want them to stay for a number of years, right? Commitment. So whether they're committed to my company, right? So that is something which I'm looking into my employee side as a company, right? Then between those employees and customers, social interactions between customers and employees, right? So that is what when doing the service blueprinting we discussed about front end employees, back end employees. Not all your employees are going to interact with your customers. So those employees who are front end employees need to be trained properly, or need to be their selection criteria will be such a way that they can empathize with customers. Think about your nurses in a hospital. Before doctor comes, so they are the first one who will interact with the customers or patients, right? If they cannot empathize and they are rude, it already like kind of create a negative image of your hospital. You might have excellent facilities, you might have excellent doctors, but that interaction, if it is a negative impact, so they are not never going to come back to your hospital. Same thing with any kind of service situation, right? Any questions on this? Okay, so now how you serve those, and I have another two slides I'll quickly complete. How you serve those customers, right? So again, some of them are basically manufacturing processes, which we'll discuss in the next class, production line approach. So some are basically project type, right? Think about your right now, once you join a company, right? Each year after April month, you have to fill your return. Either you'll do on your own or you'll go to a CA or chartered accountant to or like fill your IT return, right? So that is if you let's say somebody is providing those kind of services, tax return, investment portfolio, and all those things, right? So what is this service? It is just a project based, right? Somebody will come with a okay, I have this much salary, this much investment, help me to save taxes, right? So one kind of engagement, right? So most of the chartered kind of offices or agencies, right? So they have certain permanent staffs, they have certain contractual staffs. Contractual staffs are the ones who are doing those internships, right? 3 years of internship, chartered internship, right? So they have to manage that, how many permanent employees and how many interns they can keep, because that is somewhere depending upon financial year. At certain point of time, they will have a heavy physical kind of this load of filing returns or filing returns from individuals, companies. Next 6 months, other kind of load auditing and all those things will come, right? Accordingly, they will decide that what number of, how many number of employees they'll keep. Jobs up. So think about jobs up. If I think about a manufacturing plant, different shops do different kind of activities, right? In some lathe operations are going on, in some forming operations are going on, right? Some casting operations are going on, right? So in a manufacturing shop, some painting operations are going on. So those are the definitions of job shop. right? Independently, they are working up each other. Hospitals are more or less in a same way, right? So they'll have different departments, cardiology, neurology, different department, and they'll have common kind of a testing facilities, right? CT scan, ultrasound, blood test will be in a common facility, X-ray, but each department will be operating independently of each other, right? Many specialized department. So now what will be the concern or management decision? Balancing utilization and scheduling patient, right? Certain days you know that patient load will be much more because regular patients might travel on weekends, right? Emergency patient, there is no kind of schedule for that. How will you manage emergency patient? How many doctors or nurses will be in different shifts, right? Some patients might need some additional critical care, right? Whether you have equipment for that. Recently COVID happened, most of the hospitals ran out of oxygen, right? Because we did not prepare for that, right? Obviously it was one of the situation, nobody anticipated that kind of shortage, but it happened, right? So are you able to schedule or anticipate the usage of equipment or this kind of product? Batch is basically all of them are going through the same processes, right? All of your patients, all of your customers are going through the same processes, which happens in a airline. So they'll come, they'll put their luggages. If it is more than 15 kgs or 20 kgs, they have to check it in. Then they have to go through the security check. They'll get the boarding pass. They'll go to the whichever gate number they have been assigned. There should be waiting space there. Then there might be restaurant inside. There might be smoking space. There might be prayer room, right? So those things need to be designed. And your information, and that is somewhere airline information management has to be proper. And most of the airlines send those advance notifications to the customers. Your flight has been delayed. You might come to the airport at this point of time. If that information is not there, and let's say your flight is at 10 a.m. and it is delayed to 2 p.m. and customer will come and wait there for 4 hours unnecessary, right? So that is something your information has to come picture. Then pricing of perishable asset, right? So one key concern of in this kind of perishable asset, why it is known as perishable asset? Once, let's say Bhubaneswar to Delhi flight is at 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. today. Once the flight takes up, whatever the vacant seats are, that is gone. If it is a 120 seater and it is only half filled, 60 seats or 80 seats, right? So that means you are losing money for those 40 seats. For that 2 hour of window, you lost that 40 seats, right? So that is a perishable asset. So that is somewhere like I'm not sure whether in India they are doing it actually intelligently, but other countries they do have this kind of capacity management. I think in India there is certain regulations that is why they are not able to do it. But in other countries they have this kind of capacity management. What they basically do, they actually overbook. What they do, let's say I have a 120 seater, and based upon the past data, I know that there is always a 10 customers or 5 customers drop away, right? Do not come to the on time. So generally, I have think about in this way. I have 120 seats, but I take money from 130 customers or 140 customers. So there is algorithm running behind. So most of the times, what happens? Based because this is based on the past data, 5 to 10 customers do not come. So generally, it is as 120 customers, it goes on 120 customers. But whenever the situation arises, right? So you have 120 seats, but let's say 125 customers came on that day who have booked tickets, right? And they reached the airport on time. Now what happens? How will you manage that? So that is where they give those kind of, basically there is just a standard script. They apologize. They say that okay, and how they decide those customers who have got into the lowest cost. So if you have booked your flight on the lowest cost, right? So those 5 or 6 customers, so they'll ask them to kind of basically they throw them out of the flight. They ask them to take the next flight. Obviously, it will be free for them, and they gave some few dollars of vouchers, few dollars of discount, right? Sometimes they ask for volunteers also. So those customers who want to voluntarily skip this flight and take the next flight, they'll get $50 or $100 of discount, and that is how they manage the this kind of perishable asset. I don't think in India they have ever done it, to my knowledge, but in other countries they do it. So they want to maximize the asset utilization. So they how do they do? They overbook. Most of the times they overbook the number of seats it is available for them. Then flow cafeteria. Think about a university cafeteria or a college cafeteria, right? So you have fixed time, right? So it is not a restaurant where kind of regularly customers will be coming in, coming out, and you do not know about the number of customers. In a cafeteria, what happens? You know that okay, in a hostel, 500 or 600 students are there, so you have an idea. But what might happen? Number of students who are coming at different point of time. Some students might skip breakfast. Some students might skip lunch or dinner, right? So different segment of students, right? Accordingly, you have to manage the inventory, manage the staffing, right? So adjust staffing to demand fluctuations, right? So that is again a fixed sequence of operations. So whatever the normal food or whatever prepared for that day, students will come, take tray, take those food and be there. How many people will be there? How many staff will be there on serving? How many staff will be there to put on register, right? How many of them will be there on to cleaning the tables and all those things, right? So that is something you have